All right, folks, let's get into this. And I just want to say this right off the bat, that the things that you are going to hear in this video might not make a lot of you very happy. As a matter of fact, there will probably be a lot of people, hopefully not all and hopefully not the majority, but there will be a lot of people who will probably stop watching this video before we get to the most important part of the video, because what I say may infuriate them for one reason and one reason only, because it is striking a nerve. Now, if this video strikes a nerve, I would beg you to continue to stick around and watch it, because this video strikes a nerve with me. This video deals with the very core of the things that I face in my heart on a day-to-day basis, especially when it comes to the day in which we live. And the way that this video has to start is by me simply asking this question: what the heck happened to the church? What in the world is going on with people who identify themselves as the body of Christ? What we are seeing is compromise. We're seeing weakness. We're seeing people that are looking to the wrong things for their hope and their salvation. I want to make myself very, very clear. I talk about politics all the time, but politics will never be the answer. The answer is always going to be Christ Jesus. Politics become an extension of the things that emanate from my pulpit. Politics become an extension of a person's worldview. When we speak about the things of God, politics definitely trickle down from that place. And unfortunately, we are living in a world today where politics has taken an upside down turn, and now the church, or the work product of the church, is coming from the sprinkling down of the political infrastructure that has no accountability, and the political infrastructure that has no accountability is certainly not seeking God. So what's happening is, instead of the politicians and the political world responding to the leadership of the church, and the church responding to the leadership of God himself, the church has completely walked away from their relationship with God himself. And what they are doing now is they are establishing their worth, their effectiveness, their net value, their intrinsic value, whatever you want to call it, on how effective they can become as a result of the substandards created through the trickling down of the political infrastructure. What's happening right now is we have reversed the roles, and the church is allowing itself to be influenced by culture instead of being the influencer of culture. Now, why do I bring all this up? I bring this up because it comes from this video that I'm going to show you right now. Now, I want to say this. There have been 2 or 3 occasions in the last week where I have played this video, and I have actually said that it may be the reflection of what I believe to be one of the worst moments in American history. Now, some of you might look at this and say, how in the world can a video of Trump be reflective of one of the worst moments in American history? Let me first say this. I love President Trump. I voted for him both times. I care about him. I pray for him on a regular basis. And I pray to the God of heaven that the Lord will change his mind. And just like Daniel loved Nebuchadnezzar and served him as an extension of his love for God and his service to God, I love President Trump, and I will always be honored to serve him in any way that I can. But you have to speak truth to power, and you must be filled with the Spirit of God to speak through these things. I made a stand in showing this video and saying it was perhaps one of the worst moments in American history. And when I played the video and said that, lots of people were met with rage. They were met with rage because you're speaking against Trump, or they're met with rage because, oh, well, President Biden is not a good alternative, and all kinds of crazy conclusions that people jump to. When in reality, what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter who's in authority. The only authority we should be bowing down to is the authority of Christ. It's the true and living God that we should be looking to. Let me play the video, and I'm going to explain what I mean when I say it's the worst moment in American history. And then after that, I'm going to read something out of the Bible, and I hope you'll stick around for this, because if you're looking for a solution, and you're looking for hope, and you're looking for peace, and you're looking for discernment and understanding, then you will find the answer in the passage that I'm going to read you. And hopefully it will open up eyes and encourage people to understand what is really going on here. So let me play the video. This is from the debate, and it's tragic. Listen to this.
As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion bill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade. What happened is we brought it back to the states, and the country is now coming together on this issue. It's been a great thing.
It's not a great thing. The country is not coming together on this issue. Believe it or not, there's a lot of people in the United States of America that absolutely hate the idea of murdering babies. I don't care what excuse somebody might bring. I despise the idea of a baby being murdered because of a rapist or some incestual action. Let me just simply say this. You don't kill the baby because of the action of the father. I was reminded of something recently of how the Jews determine whether or not somebody is a Jew based on the mother being a Jew and not the father for this reason, because throughout their whole history, there were many Jewish women that were raped, many Jewish women that suffered immensely at the hands of wicked Gentiles. And yet the babies that they had, they would keep those babies and they considered those babies their own. And they looked at those babies as Jews because they were born of the mother. I'm not even going to get into the full implications of how beautiful that is. But when the president of the United States, or the former president of the United States, who's running for president again, says that he agrees with the decision to allow chemical abortions to take place, literally this abortion pill, do you understand how devastating that is? Let me just simply stop to say this. When Roe v. Wade was killed, as he puts it, right? When it was put away, when it was completely overruled and was no longer the law of the land, there were many states that literally made abortion illegal. But guess what? Abortions went up. They didn't go down. And you want to know why they went up? Because everybody flocked to this abortion pill. And this year, we may break the all-time record for abortions in this country. We may be well over 1 million abortions. And by the way, 2.8% now, not 3, 2.8% of the childbearing population that is in this country are Black women. And through these pill abortions, it will be responsible for almost 60% of those babies being Black. So if you want to talk about a civil rights issue, there's a civil rights issue. Now, where am I going with this? I got hammered. I had people that sent me comments. How could you do this? How could you speak against Trump? How in the world could you not support this? How in the world can you say these things? What do you want? Do you want the alternative be Joe Biden? No, I don't want the alternative to be Joe Biden. Is Donald Trump somebody who's made a lot of great decisions for this country? Absolutely he has. But I'm not bowing to any statue. I'm not. The reality of it is, and here's the question that I would have to ask, at what point did we as the church stop trusting in God and recognizing that God can, will, and wants to bring a solution to the problem that we have if we'll allow him to do it? At what point did we actually tell ourselves that, oh, we're not going to trust in God and rather we're going to trust in the political maneuverings so that we can gain some kind of sort of a normalcy in our life? Since when do we think that it's a bad thing to speak to power and to call people into accountability for their actions? I guarantee you, by the way, that if every evangelical leader in this country approached the former president of the United States and said, we will not support you if you do this, I promise you he would change his mind quickly. I actually think he's a reasonable man, and I actually think that by the Spirit of the Lord working in his life through very key and important people, his mind can be changed on this issue, and that's the very thing that I'm fasting and praying for now. But no way in the world is it going to ever keep me from taking a stand for righteousness. No way in the world is it going to keep me from saying this is wrong. Let me read a story to you. This is an important story, and I hope that this story will encourage you. I hope that it will cause you to recognize that you can trust in the Lord even when the worst times of your life are happening. You can trust in the Lord even when it means you're going to be against everybody else. You can trust in the Lord even when people are going to unlike you and unsubscribe and all those other things. You can trust in the Lord no matter what happens. You can put your faith and trust in him and understanding that the fire will help you and not hurt you when God is involved. Watch this. This is Nebuchadnezzar. This is in Daniel chapter 3. So let me give you a bit of a background on the story. King Nebuchadnezzar has now made a statue where he is requiring people to bow down as soon as the music plays. And there are 3 kids that we have already read about that are in the area. Daniel, I think, is probably on some type of a mission outside of the country, which is why he's probably not mentioned here. He's probably off and away on some kind of delegation. We don't know. That's what we assume is happening here, because we know Daniel certainly would not have bowed. But there are these 3 kids that are there. They are Daniel's friends. We know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Of course, if you remember them from the beginning of Daniel, their original names, their Hebrew names, were Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Very interesting kids. All love the Lord. And they say, I don't care if the music plays. I'm not bowing down. Sorry. Now, these are people that are on the inside of Nebuchadnezzar's administration. These are the people that are on the inside of his kingdom. And they're saying, no, I'm not going to do it. So there's some really jealous kids that are pretty upset by the fact that these guys have not bowed down to worship Nebuchadnezzar, and they know they could get their jobs back. They know they could get their promotions back if they get these guys to die. So they run over to the king and they tell the king what's going on. Now look what happens. Okay, watch this. Verse 12. Now there are certain Jews whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon. This is them. These are the boys snitching to Nebuchadnezzar. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Look at this in verse 13. It says, then Nebuchadnezzar in his rage and fury commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they brought these men before the king. Now I just want to bring this up, because for those of you that are on the fence of whether or not you should take a stand on issues that are highly controversial because they enrage people, understand how the devil works. The devil is good at pulling the emotional strings of mankind to be enraged so that they end up doing things that are harsh and things that are evil and things, dare I say, that are wicked and nefarious. And that's exactly what's going on. Nebuchadnezzar is blindly enraged. He decides he's so mad he's going to bring these guys in, and in his rage, he's going to say, you're going to do it in front of me. And if you don't do it in front of me, well, then there's going to be grave consequences. Can I just encourage you with something that I'm constantly reminding myself? When the crowd is enraged, when the leaders are upset, when the people are bad, angry, upset, infuriated by the fact that you are not bowing down, do not give in to the pressure of the mob. Do not bow down when they demand that you bow down. Oh, how could you, Pastor James? How could you bring this about? Do you want Biden to win? No, but I don't want blood on my hands for these precious babies that are dying. I'm not bowing down when the music plays. You can play the music all you want, but I'm not going to bow down. And folks, I'm here to tell you that if you decide you're not going to bow down when the music plays, I can promise you the reward will be fantastic. I can promise you, you will not only move the needle, you will not only make a difference, but you will watch God do incredible things, not just in your life, but in the lives of so many other people. You will see a difference being made. So the men go before Nebuchadnezzar. Look at this, verse 14. Nebuchadnezzar spoke and said unto them, is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? Do not you serve my gods, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Uh-oh. Now, most people at this point, looking at an enraged king confronting them, would buckle and go, oh, no. Listen, I've had some hearing problems, had wax in my ears. I didn't hear the music. I'm sorry. No. Of course I'll bow down. No, it's no big deal, king. I hope we're cool, man. I work for you. It's all good. They're going to be given an opportunity to bow again in the rage. And the rage might make you feel very vulnerable in that moment. So let's look at what the king continues to say. Look at this, verse 15. He says, now, if you be ready, that at what time you hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, you fall down and worship the image which I have made? Well, in other words, it's good. It's all good. But if you worship not, you shall be cast the same hour into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is that God that shall deliver you out of my hands? It's a pretty heavy challenge. He's saying, look, if you just bow down, it's all good. No big deal. We're fine. It's a misunderstanding and we move on. But if you don't, I'm throwing you in the furnace, and let's see if the God you claim to worship that's keeping you from bowing down to me, let's see what he does for you. You understand that the world is doing that to us on a regular basis. You understand that the world is getting us to think that if everybody comes against us, God won't stand for us. The world is getting us to think that it is a complete waste of time and it's impossible. I am sick and tired. I am sick and tired of people telling me on a regular basis, well, the whole thing is to win. And if we can't get our foot in the door, then we really can't do anything. Okay, great. Go bow down to the statues while the music is playing. And let's see how long not trusting in God is going to take you. I'm sorry. That's the reality of it. And if you don't want to believe that or listen to it, that's blood on your hands. But here's where it gets really encouraging, okay? Listen to me, folks. Watch what happens here in verse 16. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said unto the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. In other words, let me just explain something. We understand exactly what we're doing here. There's no question about what we stand. We're not going to beat around the bush. We're not going to play games. We're not going to wordsmith this whole thing. He says, we're just going to tell you the way it is. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. When are we going to start thinking this way? When is the church going to start thinking this way? When are believers in Christ going to start thinking this way? When are we going to start saying that we reject the ideals and the philosophies of the world? And we're going to trust that even if the furnace come, God will deliver us from the furnace. I don't understand why we're not thinking that way. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set. In other words, these guys say, oh, by the way, if it is God's will that we die in the fire, which we think will be spared from the fire, but if it's God's will that we die from the fire, at least everybody will know that we did not bow down to the image, nor did we worship your God. I know about this. I know that when the time comes that I go to be with the Lord, no one will ever be able to accuse me of saying that I compromised for the greater good. No one will ever be able to accuse me to say, yeah, you know what? He compromised his faith, but it was because he was in a battle and no one will ever be able to say that. If I perish and I don't accomplish what I believed was the purpose that God wanted me to accomplish, it's okay because I died trying. Look, I don't know about you. For me, the goal is not to win. That's God's responsibility. The goal is to run my race that I might win. But God is the one who will grant me the win. I know that as I obey God and I do things God's way, God has a very unique and specific method that he uses to bring deliverance. He's done it many times to a nation before, and he can do it again, but we have to do it his way and not the way that is prescribed by some weird existential political movement. I have lost count how many so-called Republican operatives I have seen that are just a bunch of raging drunks that hate God. So look at what Nebuchadnezzar does, because he's mad. He's real mad. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visage was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He's like, he's mad. Therefore he spoke and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. Get it hotter 7 times more. Kind of funny. 7 times. I don't know. Something unique to that? I'm not sure. Look what happens next. And he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. In other words, I'm going to get the tough guys to tie these guys up hard and throw them in the fire. Watch what happens, because this is incredible. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent, and the furnace exceeding hot. The flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down, bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished and rose up in haste and spoke and said unto his counselors, did not we cast three men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, true, O king. And he answered and said, lo, I see four men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. Think about that for a second. Their willingness to not compromise created a fire that was so hot that it actually killed the ungodly people around them. There's no reason why these men should not have died. So as they chose to walk in the fire by not bowing to their enemies, not only did the fire kill their enemies, but the fire loosened them from their chains or the rope that tied them, that bound them. Why? Because the heat of the fire melted them off. Think about it, folks. Do you want to trust God or do you not want to trust God? Do you want to walk according to God's ways or do you not want to walk according to God's ways? I have lost count how many times I've been fearful of confronting man on the basis of the knowledge of the fact that they're going to throw everything I have into the fire. It's going to be gone. But you know what God does when we choose to stick to our guns and obey him and do what he asks us to do? You know what God ends up doing? Let me tell you what God ends up doing. God has a way of not only preserving us, but he has a way of also utilizing the fire that our enemy creates to destroy that enemy. And he also has a way of taking the fire that the enemy creates and relieving us of the bondage that comes from the fears that are oftentimes associated with our desire to not want to bow. He removes bondage from our lives and he destroys our enemies. And you know what else he does when we don't bow? You know what else he does when we choose to go his way? He reminds me and you of the fact that he is with us and that he'll never leave us and forsake us. Why? Because there were three guys that were thrown in there, but guess what? They found a fourth one that was in there, and that fourth one was like the Son of God. I'd be willing to bet you that was Christ Jesus that was with him in that very moment. Or an angel, but the reality of it is we know that there was a powerful demonstration of the will and the power and the purpose of God being used through men who chose not to compromise. By the way, when push comes to shove with that fourth person, I do believe that it was Christ. I do believe it was what we would call a Christophany or theophany. It was an appearance of Christ in the Old Testament. But no matter what, it was God granting these men victory. And while he granted those men victory, he demonstrated his power in a vivid way to the pagan world. And on top of that, you know what else he did? He demonstrated to these men that he will always be with them and that he will never forsake them. Look at what happens with Nebuchadnezzar. Look what happens, what he says. This is pretty powerful. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spoke and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you servants of the Most High God, come forth and come hither. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth of the midst of the fire, and the princes, the governors, the captains, and the king's counselors being gathered together saw these men upon whose bodies the fire had no power, nor was a hair of their head singed, neither were their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. God preserved them completely. Watch this. Then Nebuchadnezzar spoke and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him and have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies that they might not serve nor worship any God except their own God. Therefore, I make a decree that every people, nation, language which speak anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, and their houses shall be made a dunghill, because there is no other God that can deliver after this sort. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Imagine for just 1 second, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego basically said, it's a greater good, and we really like this king, and he was good to me and Daniel, and they were really good. Imagine if they had gone with the flow. They would have blended into the administration and the political infrastructure like everybody else, and they would have never moved a needle. But I believe the preservation of Babylon beyond the time it should have been preserved existed the way it did because of the righteous men that were in it. My prayer is that God will extend grace and mercy to the United States of America, but I can promise you this, he won't do it if the righteous don't rise. He won't do it if we do not say, Lord, I will not bow down. He will not do it if we are willing to say, I'll just fall in line with everybody else. We have to be people who understand not only the power of God in our lives to make radical changes for ourselves, but the power of God to use our lack of willingness to compromise to change the world around us. Don't bow down, folks. Don't fall to the catastrophic mindset that our nefarious enemy continues to bestow upon us to compromise the truth. Trust in God and watch God do great things. Not only was God glorified, but these men were promoted. And I'd be willing to bet you that God used their promotions to accomplish his purposes in the great nation of Babylon. Heavy. What if God uses men like us and women like us in the United States of America to do the same thing? What if we run into a fiery furnace situation and we don't bow down? There's no telling what God could do. We got to trust him. Watch him do great things. God bless you.